I'm Zoe,
And I'm James,
and
and
we
we are
are
Childfree.
Childfree. I can never remember that tiny little intro. I
I
don't
love
know.
when we sit down to record and Zoe can't remember. It seems like you've forgotten your name.
Pretty much, pretty much. Put a camera in front of me, and that's what happens. Yes.
Awesome. Well, things bode well
Yeah.
for today's
Mm.
pod. Thank you so much for all the feedback on the last podcast,
Yeah.
all about Love is Blind. People were really into it.
Oh
I
God.
think it was cathartic,
Mm.
taking down the pronatalism behind the pods.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It felt like we were taking crazy pills for most of watching that. So when you hear from other people that they were also screaming at their telly, "We're not alone. Lovelies, we're not alone."
Yeah, and Dinky Pod have just dropped their interview with Emma,
Oh
who
my
we were
God.
talking about from Love is Blind. I haven't listened to it yet. I've seen a clip. I'm glad that she has a space in which she can finally just be herself.
Yes, I'm just so glad that we can hear her voice over the annoying men's voices, please. So yeah, can't wait to listen to the full episode.
Perfect segue.
Right.
Speaking of annoying men's voices,
Ah,
for a start, we're talking about the opinions of Gen Z men. And
yikes.
secondly, I'm leading this podcast, so you got to listen to this annoying man's
So
voice.
many annoying men's
I know you
voices.
can't get away from it.
You know I love your voice.
Yeah, I was fishing. Yeah, we are talking about an article. Well, it was many articles.
So
A
many.
a survey that dropped on International Women's Day.
Ooh, they
But
knew what they
here's
were doing, didn't they?
right.
Clever, very clever.
But because we love centering men, the article that Zoe sent to me from The Guardian was headlined Gen Z males twice as likely as baby boomers to believe wives should obey husbands.
Oh God, yeah, that is terrifying.
Hmm.
Really, really terrifying. I guess you hope that we're moving in the right direction, and then you hear a stat like that, and you're like, nope,
Hmm.
we're going backwards, guys.
So, yeah, the first bit of my note says, "Why did you send this to me?" But I guess because you were skeeved out.
Pure horror and fear and shock. Because, yeah, I guess you tell yourself so many times that we're going in the right direction, we're
Mm.
getting better. You have hope for the future, and then something in black and white makes you go, what the hell? What the hell has happened? How did this happen? And I had to share that disgust with as many people as possible. So you're welcome.
Yeah, well, let's get into all the horrifying details.
Ooh, please.
This is going to be a fun one.
Oh God, am I ready for this? I don't know. I don't know. I've seen so many kind of, yeah, discussions around it. So yeah, I think it's always good to hear more men. I haven't actually heard any men talking about it yet. Yeah, I'm glad that this old geezer is gonna is gonna lay it out to us.
Well, here we go. So, actually, I'll send you part of the article if you could read this for us. And this is how The Guardian reported it.
Global survey shows young men and boys hold more traditional views about gender roles than older generations. Almost a third of Generation Z men and boys think a wife should obey her husband, according to a global survey of 23,000 people that found young men hold more traditional views about gender roles than older generations. A third, 33% of Gen Z males also said a husband should have the final word on important decisions, according to the 29-country survey, which included Great Britain, the US, Brazil, Australia, and India. It found that Gen Z males born 1997 to 2012 were twice as likely as baby boomer men born 1946 to 1964 to have traditional views on decision making within a marriage, with just 13% of men in the older cohort agreeing that a wife should always obey her husband. Could they say traditional anymore?
I know you were
Bloody
hitting that
hell.
with a hard T. That's the ultimate,
Ugh,
that's the real T slur in this house is traditional.
right,
Um,
right.
well, yeah, explain to me what had that, what triggered you about that.
It's just this couching of toxic, misogynistic, oppressive ideas and ideologies as traditional, meaning somehow the better times, the right times,
Mm,
those good old days when men could beat their wives and they would just shut up and obey them. Like
mm.
this is not something that we want to go back to, but using this word traditional, it's a flag to people to be like, remember those good old days.
Yeah, it does have a nostalgic quality
Yeah.
to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it feels like proper,
Right.
like
Yeah.
things are all messed up in this modern society, but back then things were what more stable, more reliable,
Mm.
more rosy, just better for men,
Yeah.
but just better. And also, I think it has this sense that that's the way it should be, and that's the way it's always been,
Mm.
which it is. It those things aren't traditional
No.
values
No.
at all. And to me, it feels like very telling that in this moment, at the survey that they released to mark International Women's Day was reported almost entirely in what men had to say
Right.
about men, about women, about equality in general.
Mm.
But again, we're centering men. And we're going to get a bit deeper into why that is and what that looked like as well.
Ugh.
But what do you think of this kind of top line stat, right?
Mm.
This is the central part of the reporting was they asked men in this survey. So the survey actually included men and women,
Okay.
all types of people, like I was saying, all over the world, 23,000 people. So it's really comprehensive. And they asked people who agrees that a wife should always obey her husband,
Mm.
and broke that down by age, their
Mm-hmm.
generation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the kind of big, scary number,
Yeah.
which you get to 31% of Gen Z men
Mm-hmm.
believe that
Right.
a wife should always obey her husband.
Terrifying.
Um, and baby boomers,
Mm.
so like our parents' generation,
Yeah.
13% of men believed that.
Yeah. That's the thing when you are able to compare these two stats,
Mm,
it clearly tells you that something's gone wrong here. Because when you say women should obey their husbands, we all should know that that's wrong. We all, in today's world, should know that that is a horrifying phrase.
mm,
No one should agree with that. No one. Then you look at how now more young men and
mm.
boys believe that. You're like, oh, holy shit, no, something has gone wrong here.
Yeah, like it's really surprising. Like people who are 60 to 80 years old,
Mm,
only 13% of them believe in
right.
that.
Yeah.
And you would not think you're supposed to get like more conservative
Right.
as you get
Mm-hmm.
older and probably embrace more traditional values as well.
Yeah.
But clearly that's not what's happening. Now, I don't know if that is like truth anyway, because I haven't seen surveys like this going back through time, like
Mm-hmm.
what did our parents believe when they were 30? I don't know. Um, but also it's worth noting that Gen X, so my
Your
generation,
generation.
just I'm a very like incredibly young
Mm-hmm. Just
Gen X person.
smooth-skinned young Gen X with that massive grey beard.
21% of men in my cohort believe a wife should always obey her
Oh,
husband.
Jesus.
And then for millennials, your
My generation,
generation,
yeah.
but you're very, very, very old. Millennial.
Okay, podcast over.
Speaking of marital issues, um,
Not
20,
obeying you on that.
29% agree.
Jesus.
Right. So, like, what do you think is going on here?
I think they're going through some stuff right now. In simple terms,
Mm,
um, they are losing the power and the control that they've had for centuries because women are not allowing them to take control over their lives. So women are standing up to men more and they're not taking the shit. Men don't like that. They have been taught and trained and conditioned and socialized that women are here to serve you and to look after you, to give over their lives for you, to have
mm,
their children for you. And when women say, no, actually, I'm not going to do that,
Mm.
That can make a lot of men angry because that's exactly what they've been told. That's what they've seen in the films and the fairy tales and the books. Like, we see it as well.
Mm.
We see that women are meant to give over their lives to men and be chosen by men.
Yeah.
And we have pushed through that conditioning. We're opening our eyes to it, and we are supporting each other and speaking out about this. And we have used social platforms to empower each other, to
Mm.
push through that conditioning and say no more. And I think sadly for men, there's been this movement online and on social platforms that has told them that all these horrible feelings that you have right now, you know, how you feel powerless and empty and like you don't have meaning and purpose. Women are the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's women who have made you feel like this, and you should be angry at women,
Mm.
not the systems in place, not patriarchy,
Mm-hmm.
not the grifter men who are telling you all of this shit, earning millions of pounds from it. It's women who are the problem, and all of that fear and anger directed at women.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
100%.
yeah,
I mean, podcast over. What more do I need to add to
done,
that?
done.
That that's
Uh,
like kind of almost the argument I've carefully put together over multiple pages, and but I should have known, like, to
women,
ask you.
we've
You
had
come
this
correct.
I've had this for decades. I've been learning about this. I've experienced it. So it's something that is so in my DNA now to spot it a mile off. You know, when a female friend will tell me they're exhausted because their partner's not pulling their weight, there's like a bell in my head going, you deserve better than that. You need to
Yeah.
stand up to that. So it's like I know the triggers, I know the manipulation, I know the misogyny, I know the internalized misogyny that women have because I have opened my eyes. What are you laughing at?
I have to stop you. I have to cut you off because these are all the good points. You're stealing my thunder. I mean, I should have known
Sorry about
to ask you,
it.
ask the
Just
expert.
no, but
Um,
I mean, I want to hear from you because men are not listening to women.
mm,
We can talk about this until we are blue in the face. We have been talking about this for decades, centuries, and it's not changing men. They're not listening to us.
they're not listening.
So, what, as a man, like, what do you think about this? How do you feel about it? Because you're a man. You are a man.
For my sins, yeah.
And like this must be a really difficult thing to navigate because we know about this idea of the good men and the bad men. Those labels, they can too often reduce things down into really easy digestible things. Like you're a feminist, you want equality, you believe in it, and you stand up for it every time you are working on this project and you're sharing our voices and stories and editing the podcast. You work
Mm.
so hard to help us get that equality and help raise our voices. So how does it yeah. All right, just a little clap for that. A little clap for that. But how does it feel as a guy reading stats like
So
that?
honestly, yeah, maybe we'll get into it more later, but
Mm.
I have been doing a lot of work on myself and actually a lot of work on thinking through masculinity and what it means. Because if you'd have asked me like a year or so ago, I would have probably just said that men are shit. And what's changed is that now it's more in this like edgelord world of like social media and hot takes and stuff. It's just more acceptable to say the shit that we're all thinking and saying the quiet part out loud.
Mm.
Now, my thinking's changed a lot about this recently. And I think it's more so I'm trying to find the humanity in everyone, even
Okay.
men. And that was a joke, but it was always just like,
Lol.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, fair enough. Fair
Um,
enough.
and part of that is like recognizing that no one's all good or all bad, and I think
Mhm.
deep down we're all like basically the same, and we have the same basic needs that we want met. And but what we've done is constructed this patriarchal nightmare of a world
Mhm.
in which we drive people into like their worst impulses.
Right.
And I think actually, if there's anything about men which feels different to women, but well, I think we all want to belong, but I think there's this like insecurity in men, and especially in younger men, that they we are very scared about what people think of us,
Mm.
especially other men, and will do a lot to try and fit in and feel like we are valid in the eyes
Mm.
of other men and feel
Be
like we
admired by other
measure up
men. Mm.
exactly. And that right there is what is being exploited
Right.
by these manosphere
Mm.
fuckos
Yeah.
who are like the ultimate predators. They're like preying on young boys
Yeah.
in order to boost their profiles on social media and to get more money and to
Mm.
grift. And that's been the reporting on this, is basically like point at the manosphere very hot right now. It's like really hit
Oh
the
yeah.
mainstream media with Louis Theroux's
Women
documentary and
women have been
stuff.
talking about this for
I
fucking
know,
decades, and
I
then a
know.
man does a documentary, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, this is a problem. Like
Mm,
it does drive women mad. We're
yeah.
like, hello, we have been talking about this, but that's the world that we live in.
Right. And I think this kind of idea has gotten beyond the boundaries of like very online spaces and the discourse, which it feels like we've been saying manosphere for like even among men who are online for like a decade now.
Right.
Um, but I think with things like that TV show Adolescence
Exactly.
and
Again,
the
yeah.
Louis documentary,
Yeah.
I think normies are getting wind of this, and I think that to the danger is that they're looking at this being like, well, this is like a kind of social media problem,
Okay.
right? And like Andrew Tate, it was like once he got banned from the platforms, then our kids are safe. But I mean, him specifically had a very cunning plan to be the most popular person on TikTok without ever being on TikTok.
Okay.
And anyway, I think there's a problem with looking at social media as the problem. I
Mm.
think that is distorting the lens through which we look at it,
Yeah.
where we're sort of mistaking social media for real life. But this survey is just people, it's
Mm.
outside of social media.
Yeah.
So I think social media does matter because Gen Z are more online than
Absolutely. Yeah.
anyone's ever been
Hmm.
and have not known a world without it.
Yeah.
So, like, there is this blurring of lines between
Mm.
real life and social media and the discourse and all the toxic shit they're being
Hmm.
fed. And I think the danger is now that they'll be taking that into their lives, into their marriages.
Yeah.
Um, and I think one of the differences between Gen Z and boomer men is that, like, Gen Z, they're now saying the quiet part out loud.
Okay.
And the manosphere sort of prides itself in saying, if you're on YouTube or whatever, you say the most shocking thing,
That's
it's
it.
going to entice people who are getting radicalized by the
Mm.
algorithm.
Hmm.
It's going to fuck off people on the other side, which
Mm.
again is going to feed engagement and
Totally.
drive the algorithm. And so they're incentivized now to say these things,
Mm.
whereas the boomer men weren't.
No.
It wouldn't be acceptable.
Mm-mm.
And in the Guardian as well, alongside the news piece, they published an opinion piece by Joan Smith, who's a self-proclaimed boomer woman.
Okay.
And she said this. She said, 5 decades ago, men in the UK who expressed such views could expect to be laughed at. They were swimming against the tide as legislation was passed outlawing sex discrimination and creating a brackets theoretical right to equal pay. So, but I think
Mm.
now there's this sense of feminism has made advances,
Hmm.
and the most toxic people who are preying on men will convince them that these gains have been made at their expense,
Yeah.
and you need to somehow claw
Yes.
something back.
And yeah, it's like if women are rejecting men because they aren't living up to what it means to be a true partner in a relationship or giving them the equality, it's easier for men at that point to go, okay, fuck you. Then actually I don't want to be with women. Women are like women are shit. Women are horrible. They take all our money. It's easier to reject first rather than
Mm.
actually grow as a person, analyze, yeah, why are women scared of men? Why are women saying I don't want to get married or I don't want to have kids? Or instead of analyzing where are the feelings coming from and doing the goddamn work or going to therapy or whatever, it's so much easier to just go like, okay, fuck you all. We never wanted you in the first place.
Exactly, exactly. Here's what Professor Hee Jung Chung said about it. She's the director of the Global Institute for Women's Leadership and led this research. So, Zoe,
Okay.
tell us what Professor Chung said.
In previous generations, men were able to, in sociologist terms, perform masculinity through breadwinning roles, through their financial contributions, things like buying a house, being a provider and protector. Increasingly, for young men across the world, those opportunities are not as easy. So they feel maybe a loss of the opportunities, and they have not been given positive, diverse notions of masculinity. Yeah, absolutely. It's this idea of like, what does it mean to be a man now? Is you cannot have any element of femininity at all. It's like femininity is seen as the worst thing. Any kind of feminine energy or sensitivity, vulnerability, all of those things which have been coined as like women's emotions and women's things. Men are like, can't have anything to do with that. So now they go the opposite direction. Masculinity now is so rigid and so narrow and so oppressive to men. It actually suffocates men. And if you can't express your emotions, your full emotions, and be your full authentic self, that is a horrible place to be. Then there's rage inside of you. Then who are you going to blame? You're being told to blame women. So you're directing that anger. But yeah,
Yeah, so actually, we'll play a little game. You can have a guess at some of these
ooh,
horrifying statistics.
oh,
Um,
really?
so, the notion that men should not say "I love you" to their friends. How many men do you think agreed with that? Let's start with boomers, right? Like, can you
Percentage?
imagine either of our dads saying "I love you" to their friends?
No, sadly,
No.
no, I can't. So I'm going to say 85.
20%.
We're there. 20% say
Of
that
boomers.
you should not say,
Yes. So
okay,
actually, it's kind
oh,
of
well,
the
that's
reverse of what you were saying.
right.
80% believe
Okay.
that
Sorry, folks.
men should be
I'm not
able.
good with numbers.
I know this is going to be a nightmare of an episode. Um, 80% of boomer men believe that men should or can say "I love you" to their friends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No, so that's
that's
good.
okay,
That's,
right?
yeah.
So not
Yeah.
too bad, right?
It's not too bad. It's not too bad.
All right.
Yeah.
What do you think about Gen Z?
Oh, so Gen Z. So, oh God. I mean, I want it to be fewer. I want it to be a smaller number
You can want that.
with there. So yeah,
Yeah, the smaller number would be good in
yeah,
this case.
yeah. So that I know it's not going to be that. I know it's not. So then I'm going to say more. I'm going to say 40%.
30%.
Oh,
That's still a third of men. And
damn.
basically, that's what's coming through in all of these stats. Like, all of the numbers are kind of almost the same.
Right.
So there's like a third of men who, I don't know, have been radicalized
Yeah.
or got the fucking brain rot or whatever and think these things. Okay, let's
Terrifying.
do another one. Young men should try to be physically tough, even if not naturally big. How many boomers believe that? Should be tough.
Should be tough. Oh God. 40%.
25%.
Okay.
I mean, I'd be interested to know if there's research done in the past on these same cohorts of men when they were younger.
Right.
I don't know
Yeah.
if it's just like getting older and getting softer
Maybe.
and you're not tough anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe you let slip to your friend one time that you love them
And you felt nice.
and it felt nice. And now you don't know
You
what to do with
connected
that.
to a human for once.
All right,
Lovely.
25%.
Okay.
Gen Z,
40%.
43%. So that is quite a lot. So it's
Dear
like
God.
even more of
Terrifying.
them believe that you should be big and tough and strong if you can,
Jesus.
right?
It's wild.
And so,
It's
like you were
wild.
saying, there's this like narrowing of notions of masculinity,
Yeah.
like what it means to be a man, like strong and silent. There
Yeah.
is this sort of typical idea of whatever Tony Soprano, we just watched The Sopranos.
Oh,
He'd always say, like, what happened to Gary Cooper? Like the silent guy
Yeah.
who just walks into town and takes care
Yeah,
of
tough.
business and
No,
doesn't,
don't cry. Don't
yeah,
show
doesn't have a single
emotions.
emotion.
Yeah, just jokes about everything. It's just,
Yeah,
yeah.
but that's become like the kind of norm for people,
Okay.
for men now to expect.
Bloody hell.
So that's what they think of themselves.
Mhm.
Let's get into what they think of women.
Do I need a
Brace
stiff drink?
yourself. So a couple more stats, right? So a woman should not appear too independent. So I'll give you the boomers. The boomers, 12% of them believe that a
Okay.
woman should not appear to be too
I mean,
independent.
it's gonna be more. I want to give some hope here. I'm gonna say 20%.
24%.
Okay. Okay. It's still bad.
Still bad.
Still horrifying.
Um, a real woman should never initiate sex.
Bloody hell.
I'll give you boomers,
Mm.
7%. I mean,
20%
we
then.
21%. 21%. So let's even leave besides
Comes up
this
with this bullshit.
the real woman thing.
Ugh.
Is
Is it real woman basically just serves men and
that's the picture
keeps
that
their
we're
mouth
getting,
shut
right? So
and
that's yeah.
yeah, fuck you.
And so like that's the kind of soup that clearly a lot of these guys are swimming in.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
somewhere between 20% and
Mm.
40 something percent, nearly half of them for some of these. There's this forcing apart of the genders and then this like consolidation of what those genders are supposed to look like.
Mm.
And like masculinity has always been defined in opposition to femininity, but now it's like these things look to be opposed.
Right.
And I think you get this sense that like it's about reinforcing control over women.
Yeah.
Like you should, as the man, as the husband, have the final say
Mm-hmm.
or make all the decisions. Woman who you have a relationship with should not be independent. They should be dependent on you.
Yeah.
And you should be initiating sex. Even though, as we know from people like Andrew Tate, that to have sex with your wife is gay.
Oh my God.
But unless
Honestly.
you do it for like, here's how
Is it like 7 seconds or
it's a
something?
number, it's 6 or 7
Are
seconds.
men okay? Like what's going on? Are they determined to make their lives as shit as possible? Like really? Why are they doing this to themselves? It's like they want to be in pain. They want to be sad and depressed, and it's wild to me. It's so baffling that they can't recognize how wonderful it is to have human connections and how lovely it is to express yourself fully. And I know this is the system that we are born into, right?
Yeah.
And if you are taught these things, you see these things, and if you're sold these things online, I know it impacts people and young people especially. And if you haven't got those role models, I think like now, through the work that we do, I know how incredible having positive role models in your life is, because when you're younger, you want to feel like you belong and be part of the group and the gang so badly. Like you will do anything to the detriment of your own self. You will do anything to feel like you're part of that gang. And when you have the role models and someone who says, no, you just need to be who you are beautiful, wonderful, amazing, and someone encourages you and supports you to be who you are, God, it's so powerful. And when young boys and young girls, when they don't have that in their lives, it impacts them so badly. And it's depressing that people like Andrew Tate are in these kids' ears, and it's fucking over their lives, but it's severely fucking over women's lives, because we are the ones who have to live with this shit. We're the ones who are murdered and raped and beaten. So yes, the loneliness epidemic, where it's pushed on us that it's horrible for men. How about women? Because we're impacted by men feeling shit about themselves. Like we lose our lives because of this.
Yeah.
And that's obviously infuriates me that women have seen the structures and the oppression, and we have done the damn work. We go to therapy. We have created communities with each other, and we have pulled ourselves out of this hole, determined not to be dragged in it anymore. And we did it, and we're doing it, and young women as well, are saying, I'm not buying this shit. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Preach. I think maybe it's time for a quote from Bell Hooks.
Please,
Here
please,
you
Belle.
go.
The first act of violence that patriarchy demands of males is not violence towards women. Instead, patriarchy demands of all males that they engage in acts of psychic self-mutilation, that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves. If an individual is not successful in emotionally crippling himself, he can count on patriarchal men to enact rituals of power that will assault his self-esteem. Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what's
Yes.
happening. That's what's happening.
Absolutely.
And I think that it's so important as well when we're doing our work speaking to elders,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone needs good role models, especially child-free people, because those role models haven't been there.
Right.
And I'm stoked this morning you spoke to Colin,
Yeah.
who
79 years old, lives in Malaysia,
plays golf all
plays
bloody day.
golf, loves his life, no regrets, he said. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, I can't wait to share his story.
And we recently met David
Yeah.
in Lanzarote. He was there on a cruise.
Yes.
And so we just hooked up. And not to speak for all child-free men, but I think I related with David when we met, because I feel like we're both similar kinds of like weirdos, right? And we didn't feel the pressure to conform, and that opened up the world for us.
Right.
And we didn't have to have kids or big impressive careers or accrue a bunch of assets or all of this status stuff.
Right.
Didn't matter to us. We wanted to go out there, live our lives, experience things, get curious. And I think, like, I was going to say not to blow my own horn, and then
There's a
a
little,
car out there just went,
little.
I feel like I've been called out.
I heard.
I That's one of the explanations that I have, that like, not that I'm perfect or anything, but
What?
and a lot of that's through working on myself, but I think I'm able to work on myself and have also been a bit shielded from the type of pressure that other men get, because I don't really give too much of a fuck what those men or anyone thinks of me.
Got it. Yeah.
And that used to be what you had to do if you were going to live a child-free life as a man or a woman. You had to be like, fuck it, I'm going to do me. And I think that, like, we're seeing this like grand conformity happening,
right?
Because the stuff that this shit is like everywhere, and it's in our pockets, on our phones. And if someone is weak and lacks self-esteem, like Bell Hooks was saying, I mean, that just think like this is what men are supposed to do. We're supposed to emotionally cripple ourselves. We're not supposed to feel. And the idea of whether it's pitted as being strong or rational or like thought leaders, decision makers, all of that's brain, and it's not heart stuff. And we shortcut the heart, go to our brain, but that's not a good thing. That's a kind of loss of our humanity. And if, like Belle was saying, if we don't do that, then other patriarchal men will come for us and force us into it, pressure us into it, or leave us no other choices but to adopt these certain roles. And like you were getting at, we do that to ourselves, and then the rage is in there, but the rage is seeps out, but it's directed towards women. It goes down the patriarchal pecking order, and the shit rolls downhill. And like you were saying, that's what we're seeing, is women of this youngest generation being like, I mean, fuck that.
Yeah, no, I think that the stats on the Gen Z women are like, they are the most progressive. So that gives me, James is, okay.
It's interesting.
Okay,
It's
maybe I saw
interesting.
then one data point, but it was, that I thought they were more progressive.
It depends. I think literally got this open in front of me. I was just reading Katie Jagielnica. Sorry for butchering her name. I think she's of Polish descent or something. Not an excuse. Sociologist on Substack, and which she was highlighting a particular. So here you go. So women, I define myself as a feminist, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, let's do the men first.
Mm.
Baby boomer men, how many define themselves as a feminist?
40%.
27%.
Okay.
I mean, those are like 80-year-olds. You can't
I know.
imagine
I guess I have
these
too much
80-year-old
too
dudes.
much hope. Yeah, okay.
All
Okay.
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then what about Gen Z?
Now I'm thinking, God, is it less? 15%.
No, 36%.
Okay, thank God.
So I think
Okay.
there could also be a kind of splintering within men
Yeah,
as
that
well.
doesn't
We're
make any
seeing like
sense.
there's probably like a third who are like simps for Andrew Tate,
Yeah.
and a third who are woke bays like myself, and a third in the middle who are just normies and whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
okay, so let's do the women. I define myself as a feminist. Percent agree.
Mm,
Baby boomers.
I hope more than the men. I'm going to say 35%.
40%.
Okay, okay,
Gen X letting the side down here. It dips slightly,
okay.
39%.
Oh dear. Gen
Gen Z,
Z. And what was Gen Z men?
38%. My old eyes can't. I think it's 38%.
Oh, and it's 50.
54%.
Okay. So,
So
okay.
more than half of women,
Yeah.
which
It's still wild that it's that low. It still boggles my mind when people like, yeah, like I remember asking my mother one time, or talking about feminists. She said, "Oh, I'm not a feminist," and
my
I'm
mum
like,
says this all
and
the
I'm like,
time.
you. She was the breadwinner. She had a career in a very male-dominated industry. Got to the very top, and she wears trousers. She has bank accounts. And I'm like, do you not see that you would not have what you have now if it wasn't for women fighting for equality and being a feminist? That means that you should be one of the women who is agreeing with this because it gave you your life. And I think obviously, yeah, that boomer generation, there's a lot of, it seems, negativity towards the word feminist.
It's a dirty word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you actually explain, it's like, do you want equality? Do you want men and women to earn the same amount? Do you want them to both have bank accounts, both? And they're like, yes, yes, yes. So you're a feminist then. And it blows their mind. And it drives me mad whenever I've spoken to, yeah, like our mothers about this. So Gen Z, I'm like, you've got no excuse, ladies. Come on. We've heard about this. We know about, we should all be wanting equality, and we've had it on social media. We talk about this more. It's more in our media and culture. So it's wild to me that it's still as low as that, to be honest.
Yeah. And I have in my notes here that the survey highlights some worryingly regressive mainstream positions when it comes to gender equality.
Yeah.
So we'll do the men
Okay.
first. So men are being expected to do too much to support equality. So guess for the boomers. Just men, boomer men.
Just for a minute.
Yeah.
30%.
45%.
Bloody hell. Okay.
Gen Z.
It's not more, is it? 55?
59%.
Oh,
See, that's
God.
a lot.
That's a
That that's
lot.
that's like
Yeah, that's
everyone
insane.
except the
That's
like
insane.
30% of those who define themselves as feminists. All of the other ones
Yeah.
think that men are being expected
To
to
sub
do too much. I don't know what we're
what
doing,
right?
honestly, because
What do you
I
have
don't.
to do, men out there? What's weighing you down right now? You mean you have to like care or not beat us, not murder us? I know it's a trying time for you. I get it. I really get it. But
Just treating women like humans is such a fucking burden,
oh my
isn't it?
God, that's horrifying.
Yeah. So here's some more.
Okay.
Um, we have gone so far in promoting women's equality that we are discriminating against men. And does that sound more? Does that
Uh,
sound more extreme than the prior one?
yeah, I guess
Yeah,
so. So I'm gonna say
boomer,
less. I'm gonna say
boomer men,
fewer. I'll say 35 for the boomers,
42.
and I'll say now this idea is probably pushed out a lot on social media that like, yeah, it's hurting men. Feminism is hurting men. So I'm going to say more. I'm going to say 60%.
It's 57%.
Okay.
I mean, pretty
Okay.
much, yeah. Um,
Wow.
that's
Gross. Really gross.
Really gross.
Yeah.
Um, I was surprised by all of that. I guess with the quite big numbers for boomer men as well, not that I expect them to all adopt feminist frameworks for like how they look at the world,
Right.
but the fact that these ideas have reached them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
Well, they're on Facebook, so
I guess so. They read
sadly.
the fucking Daily Mail.
Yeah.
But this idea that we now discriminate against men, that
Yeah.
feels like an idea that like only is 20 years old. Like the men's rights movement. Remember that,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So the whole men's rights movement idea was that somehow in supporting equality for women, we are
Taking something
taking
away.
stuff away
Yeah.
from men.
Not evening the playing field.
Nope.
No, we're literally taking it from you, and that's wrong, which is ridiculous. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah, there's a good quote. Let me just find it in here. Julia Gillard, who was involved in the survey, who's the former Australian Prime
Oh,
Minister,
yeah.
she said, "We must continue to do more to dispel the idea of a zero sum game in which women are the only beneficiaries of a gender equal world."
Right.
And it's that zero sum game.
Yeah.
Someone has to win, someone has to lose. And forever, since we invented patriarchy, so for thousands of years,
Yeah.
men have been winning.
Yeah. And
But it
we've been
hasn't felt
losing.
like we've been winning. It's felt like we're just met with the default, and
Yeah.
we're entitled to a bunch of these other things. And yes, that means that like women are subservient, should obey their husbands,
Mm.
shouldn't initiate
I
sex.
mean, it's just crazy because it's like if men allowed women to take control, we would not be trying to dominate men. We just want to have equality. So we just want to be able to, well, not be murdered or raped or assaulted. We want to be paid the same. We are not going to do to men what they've done to us.
Mm-hmm.
But men seem to have in their head, I guess maybe because that's what they do, that in their head they're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, if I had power, I would do all of this horrible shit. So women, of course, when they get power, that's what they'll do. It's actually no, mate. We'd prefer a matriarchy, which is actually not about having someone at the top and everyone being dominated and oppressed. It's more of a circular thing where the most vulnerable children are actually at the top and we are supporting each other. And it's just wild that your lives would get better if you allowed women to actually have control and power because we understand what it's like to connect into yourself and your emotions and other people, build community. Like we know the benefit of doing all of those things. And we would continue to do that. And we would actually help the men do it as well. But they don't want our help. They just want to dominate us.
Mm.
And that's the depressing thing. It's like they just think women will act how we have acted for centuries. And that I don't believe that. I don't
No,
believe that.
no. So I want to do a future pod where Zoe
Oh yeah.
breaks down matriarchy for me
Yeah.
because you've been doing tons of reading into this, and I'm excited to hear about it.
Yes. Yes.
So the Joan Smith in the Guardian, our boomer correspondent, she said, and maybe this is a real obvious point, but she said women generally are more invested in equality between the sexes than men.
Right.
And comes up with some examples of how women have suffered for centuries from hardline attitudes to gender roles. Like she remembers in sixth form, she was told she couldn't take A-level economics because it's a girls' school. And it wasn't unusual in the 70s to be told they needed a male guarantor to get a mortgage,
Yeah.
like let
Wow.
alone credit, all the rest of it. This was interesting what she said here, though, which I think sums up the kind of boomer experience. She said, at the same time, I got a free university education and never worried about struggling to find a job. Looking back, the baby boomers in Western countries were an unusually optimistic generation, something that encouraged liberal social attitudes. But it's easier to think about other people's rights when you're not burdened by debt, unable to find a job, and anxious about the future. There's a kind of economic argument that people are making, which I think in some ways is in danger of letting men off the hook for this, right? We used to be the breadwinner, and now can't, because the best we can
Yeah.
hope for is like having a job, and our partner would also then have a job.
Yeah.
And then who knows how those wages would stack up, but we're certainly like not hoping for one person having a job and one person staying at home and raising the
This is
kids.
impossible now.
It's
Nowadays.
impossible,
Yeah.
and
So women have to work.
it's a fantasy, and it's like the whole trad wife
Yeah.
fantasy
Yeah.
as
Oh
been
yeah.
shown.
Oh, we're gonna have to do an episode on the trad wife stuff.
Oh yeah.
This idea that, yeah, you just need to relinquish all of the independence and freedom that you have worked so bloody hard to get, and your life will be better. That it's the perfect scam, really, is for women who have been, they're exhausted, they're juggling, they're still doing most of the labor in the home, and they've got a career. It's the perfect scam to tell them your life will be easier if you do this.
It's the mirror image of the argument that feminism's gone too far, but it's the version for women is like, well, because of feminism, you now go to work and you come home and take care of the kids. You can have it all, but having it all is exhausting.
Right.
And you need to be like running on this treadmill to like push your careers forwards, to like helicopter parent your children, to have all of these things that you want. Wouldn't it be great if just a man went out and earned the money for you? And that's why, maybe we'll save it for the trad wife episode, but all of them performing this like back to the land kind of Little House on the Prairie traditional way of life. Their husbands are all like heirs to airline fortunes and stuff. Like the only people who can afford to do it are the super rich.
Yeah, and you do, as a woman, you do not want to relinquish your earning capabilities, your autonomy, your freedom, because that means you're in a very vulnerable position, right? And if you're with one of these guys who sadly doesn't see you as an equal, then what happens when your relationship is deteriorating, or you just feel, uncared for, unloved, unsupported, and you want to leave? You can't, because you don't have the funds or the means or the support to do it. So it's like, women, we can't put ourselves in those kinds of positions. But it's like it's the perfect scam. I mean, everyone is fucked under capitalism. This is what we should actually be fighting against, because we're all oppressed under capitalism, just on a treadmill of work until you die, and you might get a few years and maybe enjoy the last couple of years or whatever, or you might not. And we have to like see that and go, fuck that.
Yeah, perfect timing. So here's a reel that Zoe
that.
shared with me from PhD student, I think, called Louisa Munch.
She's
this is her like critical analysis of that Louis Theroux Manosphere documentary, but it equally applies to what we're talking about right now. So let's have a listen.
As a critical theorist who wrote about this in a PhD. For one, these men, HS Tiki-Toki, whatever the rest of them are called, this is a pure performance of what they perceive masculinity to be within capitalism. It's literally the drag performance of masculinity. And they are doing it all. They are doing everything to become the performance. It's just a theatrical display of what they think it is. But the crisis of masculinity isn't a crisis of masculinity. It's a crisis of capitalism. Capitalism has always created a symbolic identity for white men. It's always created a predetermined position of power for them. But what was also interesting in the documentary is that these men often came from poor backgrounds, like working class backgrounds. Previously, they would have had a space to struggle. And for the working class man, that's always been on the left. We've also historically had places to build community and solidarity, like football clubs, spaces that were designed specifically for creating community through politics, like labour clubs, pubs, public houses. These spaces have been eroded by financialisation as capitalism morphed into neoliberalism, which is like capitalism on steroids. Essentially, the stakes have never been higher.
Oh, she's amazing. Yeah, I've been following her for a while, and she always nails it. And this performance of masculinity. That's exactly it. That's what I felt was happening on our last episode, watching Love is Blind. Both men and women were performing what they thought they were meant to be as a man or as a woman, you know, and as a man, I've got to be the provider, and I've got to want to protect my family. And as the woman, I need to be subservient, and I want to create that loving, caring environment for my husband. Just see this performance instead of actually delving into who you are. Let go of all of that performance. It's not serving any of us.
No.
It's harming us, in fact.
And I think it's interesting, like the stuff that Louisa was talking about in that reel has been happening from the baby boom onwards.
Right.
And so, like, what I noticed when looking at these surveys is that actually there's all of this fuss about Gen Z versus baby boomers. But actually, it's a question of the divide is like after the baby boomers and then everyone else. So men who think that a wife should obey her husband, 13% of baby boomers think that. We know that 31% of Gen Z think that. Gen X is like 21% and millennials, 29%. So millennials almost side with Gen Z.
Right.
And like Gen X is on its way that way. And you see that kind of split. I mean, what do you think that's about? Like, why do you think that? What would have happened during baby boomers' lifetimes that changed everything forever?
I mean, getting the pill, having that that gave women autonomy and control over their lives. That was a seismic shift for everyone, for men and for women. It gave everyone control over their lives, but especially gave women a chance to decide, do I want to have children? Do I not? If I'm going to have them, how many would I have? When would I have them? Or I can delay this, then I can go out and have that freedom and career that I didn't see my mother having or my grandmother having. It changed everything. And it's interesting now, I guess, that we see on social media, there's almost like, again, a reversal of looking at contraceptives and the pill as it's been weaponized, and women are now being told to fear it, and you need to listen to your body and your feminine energy, don't mess with it, and all of that. That's another trad wife addition
absolutely.
in there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you can trace it all back to the pill dropped.
Yeah.
So that's the story. We hear about this all the time because of what we do, but the story of this idea of the birth rate is falling. It's only falling if you start counting from just before the pill, like the baby boom that defines that generation. That was just a post-war boom of abundance and economic prosperity, stability. And so people were able to have more kids.
Yeah.
And then when the pill, I keep wanting to say dropped, but whatever. It's because it's wasn't invented then. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This is me showing my Gen X, like trying to get down with the kids. From that point, yes, the birth rate drops off because women they have bodily autonomy and a choice and more control over their lives. So they can go out and get an education, have a career, put off having children longer, have fewer, have none at all.
Right. Yeah.
And that's basically the story of the birth rate.
Yeah.
But it's also like the story of these changing gender attitudes, right? Because men before that were probably the breadwinner.
Yes.
Because women would have more kids.
They couldn't have a career.
They could not have a career or their own money or anything.
Yeah.
So they were under control.
They were in that role. Yeah.
So I feel like actually what's happening is for boomer men, they don't need to believe that wives should be obedient because not to speak for all of them, but whatever, they are more likely to have obedient wives or wives who are in that role and that role only and didn't exist outside of that. And they don't have to feel a particular way about equality or women's independence or whether they initiate sex or anything like that because the roles were more rigid and capitalism enforced them so strongly that they were kind of secure in their position and could seem outside of that not progressive, but the Guardian writer was saying socially liberal, you know. And so this is a story of men losing their dominance and control and now desperately trying to reassert it
Absolutely.
and to get it back, and telling each other that they should be trying to get it back.
Right. Yeah, when you don't know what your place is in this world, that can be really destabilizing. What's the point of me if the whole world has told me that I'm here to look after women and protect them and provide for them and be the breadwinner and go out and get their money, and then all of a sudden women are like, well, actually, I don't need that. I can earn my own money. I don't need your protection. So then it's like, well, what am I here for? What is my role here? They are struggling to find their place, and women, we're not going back. You can't uninvent the pill, as much as some politicians and governments are trying their best to,
or health and wellness influencers.
Yeah, no, they're trying to say you should be scared of this because it's just going to cause you a lot of evil. And women, we have to be smart about this and recognize that we're being sold a lie here, because they want us back in the home, in the kitchen, serving men and keeping our mouths shut and just being quiet. Like, they want us to go back to that place. So we have to keep fighting and stand firm. Like, we're not going back. And I think patriarchy it's obviously, it's recognizing that women are waking up and saying no more. And what can it do now? It can force us to have children we don't want. It can take away our contraceptives. It can take away our right to vote. We see this happening in the US. Like, they are actively trying to take away the right to vote, contraceptives. And that's what's, sadly, that's like it's all it's got left. All it's got left right now is to force women. And we're not going to sit by and let it happen.
No,
like,
I've got a great quote here from someone who said, "Fuck that, we're not buying it." Do you know who that was?
I do know who that was. That was me.
That was Zoe in a great iPaper article that I'm going to drop in the show notes.
It was good press. I mean,
absolutely spitting fire on that one.
Yeah, like, we're not buying it anymore, and that can be it is very worrying for patriarchy, for capitalism. Capitalism needs women to give over our labor for free. It needs us to have the children so that we have more taxpayers and consumers. And when women go, you know what, actually, I'm not going to be a mother, or I'm only going to have one child, that fucks up their whole system. They need women to support this system for free with putting up with the shit. And if we stand up and we don't take that shit anymore, then it's screwed. It's screwed. Yeah.
So on that note, another stat. So how many people think that women's rights have gone too far in their own country? So this is like all ages, all men and women, talking about their own country. How many people think that women's rights have gone too far?
40%?
52%.
Dear God.
Guess what it was in 2019?
Less than that.
42%.
Jesus.
And in Britain, the increase it was more than average. It's 12%. So they're getting like the rhetoric, right?
Yeah.
That's, like you're saying, because of all that you're said, it's like at the end of that is like, they're screwed.
Yes.
So I think people are like starting to recognize that they're screwed, but they're not following back the argument to where you start, which is like, because of patriarchy.
Right.
It's almost like, I mean, it's bonkers because we don't have equality. Like, women aren't paid the same just to like pluck anything out any measure, right? And then the idea that somehow if women had got to equality, that's too far.
Right.
Like, the idea that there can be too much equality is insane.
Yeah.
And is part of that idea of the zero-sum game.
Yeah. One thing that I keep thinking about is when they don't know what their role is in society, women actually want them to be whole humans. We actually don't want them to push down their emotions, to not be vulnerable. Like, we want them to be whole. But if they're not going to bring anything into a relationship that we can already provide for ourselves, then they are screwed. If they come into a relationship and we are already the breadwinners, we are already able to look after ourselves, then we need them to bring something else. And unless they're going to find that, we're not going to need them in our lives. You know,
Yeah.
you're listening.
I'm listening. I'm listening.
You know, I mean, I still think I've got a bloody unicorn here. Like, we've been together 25 years or something.
Near enough.
But, like, yeah, I don't know how, yes, I managed to find a man who is a true feminist. And when we saw David, the Childfree elder, he was asking about us. And when we met, he said, do you think this is like spiritual that you guys met? Because you work together, you've been together for so long. And I guess I'd never thought about it. Like, this somehow was meant, we were meant to find each other.
Yeah.
But I just think everyone deserves to have, if they want to be in a partnership, not everyone needs to be in a partnership. And like I've said to you, if something happens, if something happens in our relationship,
The threat.
no, I'm not even going to say divorce, because I don't see that could ever happen. But if you weren't here, I think I'd be absolutely fine by myself. I'd be fine. I would not be like, I need to find that man, because sadly, I don't see many great examples of it. Like, we've got friends who are like you, which gives me hope. Like, there are men out there. Well,
They're just contemplating the fact that, like, you don't think divorce is going to happen, but you've decided definitely that, like, if I die, you're going to be
murder
fine.
you,
You're going to be fine.
no, but yes.
No, I hear you.
It's, I don't know how I got someone like you. We have friends who also have amazing guys, so they are out there. I just think, yeah, you guys need to start mentoring young men, or speaking to them or something, because I do follow a lot of social accounts of men who they are putting out the right things. They are talking about men tapping into their emotions. So it's like they are there, but sadly the shit ones are so fucking loud, and they've used social media and weaponized it, and it's like the perfect breeding ground for the hate. Right, the hate and the fear just thrives on social media. And while the Gen Zs are on social media, that's a problem.
It is. Speaking of social media, got another reel that you sent me. I like this one by M. Clarkson. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, she's I follow her on Substack, on Instagram. She's an incredible voice. She talks a lot about capitalism as well.
Do you know who her dad is?
It's not Jeremy Clarkson.
Jeremy Clarkson.
No way.
So if anyone knows anything about toxic boomer men,
Jesus.
Yesterday, the findings of a global survey were published that found that almost a third of Gen Z men think a wife should obey her husband. They compared their beliefs with those of the men in the baby boomer generation, and they looked at how young men are thinking about gender roles, and the findings were pretty horrifying. 59% of Gen Z men said that men are expected to do too much to support equality, and we're going to get into all of that, but not before I make a tiny point on the language used in this reporting, because it's been framed as if the views these men and boys are expressing are traditional ones, and that gives them a gravitas that I personally don't think they deserve. I think it legitimizes them. I think it sanitizes them somehow. Traditional views, to my mind, kind of implies romantic ones, old-fashioned ones, when in actual fact what these views are within today's climate are just deeply misogynistic. And I think that's an important distinction, because I don't think these findings represent some resurgence of tradition, nor do I think they're a case of regression into traditional patriarchy either. This feels, to me at least, like something else and something new, quite frankly. Sexism on steroids. And there is such a tragic inevitability to all of this. We knew that Gen Z were really the first ones to be growing up in a world that their parents didn't know or understand. We knew that would be dangerous. We knew there would be consequences. Most of us knew it would be women and girls who were going to be the ones to suffer them. And sure enough, here it is. And it's clear in the data, this isn't something boys have garnered from their millennial or Gen X parents, or even from their boomer relatives. This isn't a hangover from an old age. Just look at the disparity in the attitudes towards women initiating sex. They're not modelling behaviours they see around them in the typical way of maintaining a tradition. They are being moulded, they are being fed by algorithms built by tech bros with little to no regulation. This is a story we've heard before. This is Lord of the Flies. We are starting now to understand the extent of the dehumanizing effects of social media. We know too that exposure to online porn like this generation have had leads to unprecedented objectification of women. It doesn't take much to understand that those two things alone, before you throw in a pandemic, absurd politics and politicians, the rise of the Manosphere were a recipe for disaster. And I think something we would do very well to remember as we continue to whack our heads against the wall trying to have this conversation is that when we talk about falling birth rates and young women choosing not to get married or even to date, that this is the context. When we talk about the male loneliness epidemic, when it is framed as a consequence of feminism, the fault of young women, let us remember this information. These are the women, these are the girls that are being expected by a growing number of their peers to be obeying and complying. Their independence, choice and autonomy was fought for. It must now be protected. We must be fervent in our support of them as they run as fast from this as they can get.
Amazing. Yeah.
So that made me think, are women running away from this? And I dipped back into a different survey. Don't worry, we're not falling down another
More data,
another
James.
data rabbit
He's a bit
hole.
of a data nerd, yeah.
You know,
His dad is a statistician, so I get it.
I'm just emulating the boomers before me. The poll that they did after the last US election of people who voted for Trump and people who voted for Harris, and they looked specifically at Gen Z men and women within that cohort, and that also got a lot of like media attention at the time for that kind of ideological split, which I feel like we're seeing here with like adherence to the manosphere and things like that. But what people didn't really pick up on is that like Trump voting young women are like the rest of us. Like they were asked, all of them, what the markers of success are. How will you know when you've been successful? And for people who voted for Harris of any gender, and for women who voted for Trump, marriage and having children were surprisingly low on their list, but they were at the top for Trump voting men. And I think that's the thing, is they're being fed this thing that these are the keys to like their status and their position in society in terms of like dominance and control.
Men see having a wife and a child as the ultimate status symbol, right? And like you don't have to do anything once you've got them. It's just as long as I've got these things. It's like when we were watching Love is Blind, and it's almost like talking about having a child as if you're buying a handbag. It's like that's it. There is no delving into what it's actually entailing, raising a human for the rest of your life. That's not what they're thinking in their head.
No.
It's just, I need to check this off. You are the vessel that will give me that. And obviously women are going, hell no.
And I think becoming a mother for people entails like a kind of shift in their identity. Like they become something different and whatever. There's a lot of stuff said about that actually erases the experience of a lot of women who don't have children.
Right.
But I think a man becoming a husband and a father, I think that for them is like accruing these assets that shore up their identity and like status.
We got the fatherhood bump, right? Which when you have kids, you basically earn more money, and then you've got the motherhood penalty. They actually lose money. Could not be clearer.
Right. And that's why.
Oh God, what you got?
I can't not quote this. So Fern Brady, the comedian, on her new podcast, Ignore That Feeling. She says, "I think motherhood is slavery and marriage is utter degradation."
Well, when you lay out the facts, like women do terribly in marriages, men, they do fabulously. Like the stats are there, the facts are there, because men get someone to look after their children while they go out and earn a living, so they can enhance their careers. They get to have hobbies. They get someone who prepares their meals, cleans their clothes, cleans their house, looks after their children, all of those things. So men get that when they're in marriages. Women are the ones who have to do all of that invisible work, that unpaid labor. I would feel like a slave if I was in a marriage where I had to do the majority of all of those things. I would feel like I am a slave then, because it's expected of me because I am a woman.
So let's get to the women.
Okay, yay. Don't do me dirty, girls.
So a wife should always obey her husband. I'm just saying that.
Get out the van.
No.
Out.
Right. So baby boomer men, 13% of them thought a wife should always obey her husband. Women, of that age.
Right. So because of family members, I'm going to say more because it's like they've been indoctrinated into this idea that their position in life is to look after their men. So I'm gonna say 20%.
No, 6%.
Yay!
Yay! That's just our shitty
Ah.
family members. No, I think they they have
Oof. Okay, that's good.
experienced feminism, and I think
Right.
like because of
Yeah.
that
Mm.
it
They
did
grew through
something
that. Yeah,
for them.
right. Yes, they saw it.
Gen Z, 31% of men believe a wife should always obey her husband.
I mean,
Women?
please, God, please just let it be lower. 20%.
18%.
Yes. Okay. Still too much, but yes.
Right, compared to
Still
like
too much.
their parents or grandparents'
Yeah.
generation, 6% of women
That's
believe
wild.
that. So more these days, millennials and Gen Z, women are more likely to believe that a wife should always obey her husband.
Horrifying.
Which I think actually, and I've got nothing to back this up, but I have this pet theory that I think they're looking at the role of wife there. I think young women are more likely to believe that a wife is obedient to her husband, and also they're less likely to get married, right?
Yeah.
Because that is the deal. It is
True.
like no matter how you
the
cut
game.
it,
Yeah.
whether it's like from the traditional religious perspective or from the financial perspective in certain countries, like in Germany, women get married, and when they form that partnership, there are incentives for the person who earns less to basically not work.
Yeah.
And the person who earns less is
the
always the woman.
Yeah.
And so I think that's looking at like more the institution of marriage. I don't think we don't know because what the survey didn't get into this, but I don't think women were expressing a belief that women are somehow subservient to men.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yes.
Makes sense? Nothing to back it up. They're also, Gen Z women are also less likely than the men in their generation and the people in other generations. They're less likely to believe that a woman shouldn't appear too independent. So they believe in women's independence. They also believe that women can initiate sex. So I think they have much more like progressive views of being a woman. More than half of them think of themselves as feminists. So that makes sense.
Right.
But what's interesting is when it comes to their ideas on gender equality. So let's get back to this one. Men are expected to do too much to support equality. Baby boomer men, 45% think this. Gen Z men, 59% think this. Baby boomer women, to give you a little clue, 30% think that men are being expected to do too much to support equality. What about Gen Z women?
30%.
41%.
What does that even mean? Expected support equality.
To do too much. To support equality.
Please tell me, what are they doing? What do you mean? You mean allow them to have jobs? Allow them to have bank accounts? Like,
right.
Encourage women to like go after their dreams? Like, what exactly does it mean to do too much?
It's kind of a nonsense thing that sounds like rhetoric. So I think it's more, if anything, it's like registering like who has heard these talking points.
Yeah.
And they don't make any sense because they come from fucking Manosphere dickheads.
Yeah.
But this one, right? We have gone so far in promoting women's equality that we are discriminating against men. And so boomers, the men, and Gen Z men are just either side of 50% with this. Baby boomer women, 29%. Gen Z women?
I mean, I hope less, 20%?
38%.
What?
Right.
That is horrifying.
So what do you think that's all about?
I mean, they're getting fed the same bullshit on social media. They're chronically online. So the system, it's working. Like, that rhetoric is working. It's just seeping into women's heads as much as men's, sadly. God, that's depressing, though. It's really nightmare.
Yeah, I think it looks like young women have kind of evolved their thinking about themselves but you'll ultimately are still trained to put men first
Right.
and socialized
Yeah.
in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And like no amount of feminist thinking that you can intake or like good discourse from folks on Instagram, like we've been looking at,
Yeah.
can break that entirely. It's still like
Yeah.
in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I think like now that's not about subservience to men. It's about sympathy with men.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like the whole loneliness epidemic,
Exactly.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, poor men. They're suddenly all alone. Like, women, you need to not have standards and
Hmm.
you need to put up with this shit because poor men are alone. And I mean, we're talking incessantly about the loneliness epidemic for men. It's like, women are also lonely, by the way. There's
Hmm.
two people here that can want relationships, and it's really fucking sad for women who want to be in partnerships, who they want to be in a loving relationship, perhaps, and it's not possible. They're going on dates where men do not ask them any questions. Where
We saw it on Love is Blind.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
the men are out there, if they're out there at all, with like this script of things that they're supposed to ask,
yeah,
like topics, the
safe
safe
topics,
topics,
yeah, oh
and
yeah,
this and the right things to say
mm-hmm.
within those topics.
Yeah,
Like, I of course I want to be a dad.
yeah,
Blah blah blah. Just milk toast bullshit, non-opinions,
mm-hmm.
because what they're really thinking inside their head is fucked. But that becomes a problem for women
Mm-hmm.
because the whole approach of the manosphere is about fucking causing women
Yeah,
problems
and
as a way
lying
of
to them.
control
Mm-hmm.
and lying,
Yeah.
and also because women are socialized to look after men, and that's
Yeah.
still happening.
Yeah, it's our responsibility to make sure the men aren't doing too much work to give us equality. Those poor men, like, come on now, we can't
Right.
expect men to like want to stop hurting us or give us jobs or you treat us like humans. I mean, that's just a bit too far, isn't it?
Or even to look after ourselves.
Right.
That's the thing.
Yes.
Like we were just listening to
Yeah.
Sounds Like a Cult, and they were talking about the manosphere. They had Liz Plank on it, and she was saying a couple of times like she's sick of hearing women being told like go out there and hug a man.
I
She's
know,
like,
fuck
no,
that.
men should be out there hugging
Hugging each
men.
other.
They should be saying,
Exactly.
I love
It's not
you.
our responsibility to save men. Like we've had to save ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's hard work. Like you have to put in the time to go to therapy, to the support groups, to do the reading. Like you have to do this shit yourself. And it's not fair for women to again be blamed for this. Like I see this a lot when the adolescence documentary came out and talking about like, oh, blaming mothers. Like, oh, what's the mother doing about their young boys who are like hateful on girls? It is not up to mothers to try and lift men out of it, out of this hole. Like they're doing enough. They're doing still most of the childcare, most of the domestic labor, and they might have a career. How about the dads? What are the dads doing?
Right.
And I hate that we are putting that responsibility on women to just put up with it. You let men, oh, it's just men, it's just locker room talk. It's just give them a free pass. Just let them be men. And no, fuck that. No.
Fuck that. We're not buying it.
We're not buying it.
That's your new catchphrase.
That's my new mantra.
Hello, hello, hello. That's why, yeah, about an hour ago when you mentioned internalized misogyny,
Oh yeah.
I was like, yep, that's
Yeah.
where we're headed.
Yeah.
It's a new form of internalized misogyny where women no longer believe that you are lesser than men or don't deserve all of the things that you deserve. But it's clear that men are a danger to themselves and to others,
Right.
especially to women. And so therefore it becomes like the collective responsibility to make sure men are okay.
Right.
Because it's dangerous to let them not be okay.
Right.
And I think that's kind of like the last frontier of like feminism is, I don't know what, some sort of like inner work on all of our accounts. Like men over here, we have to be looking after ourselves and looking out for each other. And I try to do this with my friends and other groups I'm a part of that are like mostly men, which are very loving and supportive and people are all working on themselves and looking inwards and trying to undo, not specifically patriarchy, but the bullshit that's inside of us, and taking responsibility for that. And like on the other side, women have to, I know it's hard, it's dangerous, but have to like let go.
Yeah.
And whatever, if men go in their own way, if they want to go their own way, let them.
I mean, this is evolution, right? This is what happens if men can't evolve and help themselves to become better humans, to look after each other, look after themselves, then women will not become partners with them. Women will opt out of that system, and they can try and force us to have their babies and be partnered up, but I don't think women are ever going to stand for that. I just think there would be an uprising so great, because we've lived through this shit for so long now. I just think we're done with it. And when you're younger, you are more easily led, and that's why younger folks, they need to have these role models in their lives, because we're all fed it from that young age. I was fed it as well, and I've probably done a lot of that deprogramming now in my 40s. I probably did it with you as well, right? I would be like, hey, you need to book that doctor's appointment, hey, you need to book that thing. I did more caring for making sure you were okay and prioritizing your needs. And now I'm like, no, this is a whole ass human adult grown man next to me, and it's up to him. If he wants to better himself and to grow, that's his responsibility. Like the tools are there, and it's in our nature, sadly, and our conditioning for women to want to try and lift out other people as we're trying to lift ourselves out of this quagmire. But it's hard enough just doing it for yourself. So we have to start prioritizing ourselves, our needs, and not diminish ourselves, and certainly not accept bad behavior, poor men. Like, no, God damn it. I'd rather be alone. I truly would. And I'd have a house full of badass women and cats.
Right, that's the thing. You wouldn't be alone.
No, that's it. We would
So,
create
like,
the communities.
Because you create communities, and men have been taught to be competitive. And
dominate.
Insular, and dominate, and that's stuff we need to work on as well.
Right.
But I think there's like stuff collectively we can do about this. And the only person I read who had any kind of path forward on this was Katie Jagielnicka on Substack. So see what you think of this. So
the way forward isn't through symbolic power plays, trad life fantasies, or a rollback of women's economic security and independence. The way forward is through rewriting the old scripts around gender and relationships, but also work. Men shouldn't have to be breadwinners. Most men never really were, and certainly not if you look at the whole of human history, rather than just the last couple of centuries, and most likely never will be. But women shouldn't have to be either. If initiatives such as universal basic income were taken seriously and the pressure to work, to survive, were lifted, relationships could be freed from financial stress and old hierarchies that still haunt so many of them. And they might become something else entirely, something much better. There are many things we could control if we only collectively set our minds to it instead of turning on one another. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because with all of this, like, the context for all of this is capitalism.
Yeah.
And I think instead of giving men a pass for poor behavior or these kind of transgressive attitudes and all of the terrible manosphere stuff, instead of saying like, well, of course they're like this because they're hopeless, because they have no prospects and whatever. Instead of that, it's like, well, okay, then you're kind of saying that it's a systemic problem. So what do you do about it? Because it can't be like, no one has kind of solutions for any of this. They just say like, oh, it's bad. And then they'll make a case for whatever they want to happen, which quite often is women going easy on men or something.
Right.
But it's also, like Katie's saying here, women aren't going to roll back their economic security
No.
and independence.
Mm-mm.
That isn't what's going to happen, even though clearly some of the people in this survey, some of the people writing about this, some of the people they're listening to from Manosphere spaces, that's what they're pushing for.
Yeah.
That's their agenda. And that's what they're taking this like crisis of masculinity and weaponizing it and trying to drive a wedge between people of all kinds, but especially along gender lines. And we can't let that happen.
No. Mm-mm.
And we can't let them drive parents against child-free and childless people, or people in certain countries against immigrants, or whoever it is. Like, we all aren't the problem.
No.
Like, the problem is up
Look
there.
up, yeah.
Look up.
That's it. They're just pitting each other against each other. And sadly, women, we are collateral damage with a lot of this shit. And that's what's most dangerous about this shit. If we allow this to continue, it's women who are going to be harmed and are being hurt in the process of all of this. But we can't change the fact that like we have grown and we have become stronger, and we worked damn hard to get to where we are. And the women before us worked really hard to blaze that trail for us. So we're not going back. Like, we're not. And if men want to come along with us, please do so. But do the work to better yourselves and to look at the system, because it's hurting you as much as it's hurting us. You may not see that, but if you do the work, you will start to see just how sad a life it is in patriarchy as a man. You may not be under threat of being killed or assaulted, but you're, like Bell Hooks is saying, like, you have to almost assault yourself.
So bring on the matriarchy.
Damn right. Absolutely. Can't wait for that episode.
And if you liked this episode, you can get more on our Substack.
Yes, you can.
We are childfree.substack.com, where we share child-free stories, especially from inspiring boomers at the minute.
So bloody inspiring.
You get more podcasts, more portraits, and you can also support us to create more of this content, which we need more of in this world. So if you
access to the chat as well.
So if you want to
vent and rants like myself
you
on a daily
badmouth men, I don't mind. I love to see it. I'll jump in there with you.
There you go. Yeah, come and join us over there. And we are really grateful for the folks who do support us to keep Dolly literally on the road, to keep petrol in her tank. We so appreciate our supporters. And if you want to
do it without you.
No, we literally couldn't do it without you. And if you wanted to leave us a 5-star review, we would be so grateful, because those reviews are what help other child-free folks find this and give them hope. So it really does make a difference. Thank you.
It does help smash the patriarchy.
Yes. And that's our mission, basically.
So thank you for listening.
Thanks, lovelies.
Speak soon, lovelies.
Bye.
Bye.